They told me the night would be routine. It was February 5th, 1958, a cold winter sky over the Georgia coast. I was in command of a B-47 Stratojet on a routine training flight out of Homestead. The bomber was carrying a Mark 15 thermonuclear weapon for the exercise, an operational heavy weapon of the era. We were at altitude, instruments green, crews focused on the mission checklist. That was at 1 a.m. Everything looked normal. What happened next happened fast. An F-86 Sabre, part of the formation training, collided with our bomber in the darkness. I remember instruments warning the sudden shudder and the impossibility of the moment. A high-altitude impact that sent vibrations through the airframe. The Sabre's pilot, Lieutenant Clarence Stewart, fought his jet and then, as later reports record, ejected and landed in a marsh on the South Carolina side of the Savannah River. He survived. That was a mercy in what could have been much worse. Our bomber had been damaged, but the crew was alive, and we retained some measure of control. The B-47 lost altitude rapidly after the collision, from cruising height of about 38,000 feet down to much lower levels, and we struggled to steady her. I had to decide fast: land back at base, attempt an emergency field landing, or do something else. Hunter Air Force Base near Savannah was our obvious choice, but the runway was reported to be unsafe, undergoing repairs. Bringing a heavy bomber with a full load onto a short, rough runway with a damaged airframe could have caused the bomb to break loose, or the aircraft to cartwheel on impact. I can still picture it. The image of that massive weapon tearing out of the belly on a bad landing, and the devastation that could cause on the ground. That calculation drove the decision that followed. We made the call to jettison the weapon into the water, a deliberate, controlled release. Contemporary records and the official Air Force investigation say the crew released the Mark 15 from roughly 7,200 feet at an airspeed near 200 knots into Wausau Sound near Tybee Island, several miles off the Georgia coast. When the weapon struck the water, there was no explosion. The aircraft remained flyable, and we recovered to Hunter AFB. I was later awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for actions that night. The citation recognized the difficulty of command decisions taken to preserve the crew and public safety. This is where the story changed, from a simple flying accident to a decades-long mystery. The Mark 15 we released was not a small object. It weighed around 7,600 pounds and measured roughly 12 feet in length. It contained about 400 pounds of conventional explosives along with heavy metal components, that is, uranium and parts associated with the nuclear device's structure. Importantly, the official transfer receipt from the Atomic Energy Commission, dated February 4th, 1958, records that the weapon had been in a training transport configuration. At the time, the Air Force maintained that the nuclear capsule, the removable component required to initiate a nuclear detonation, had been removed for transport. In other words, official custody paperwork said the bomb could not produce a nuclear yield. Not everyone accepted that as the final word. Later testimony and questions, some declassified only years afterward, left a shadow of uncertainty. But one fact remained clear. When the weapon hit the water, there was no nuclear detonation. That would have been impossible if there truly was no capsule. We mounted a search immediately. Beginning on February 6, 1958, teams from the Air Force joined with Navy personnel to look for the weapon in Wassaw Sound. Sonar teams, drag cable sweeps, divers in cold water, day after day, searching and finding nothing. For 9 weeks, we searched every lead they gave us. On April 16, 1958, the Air Force declared the weapon irretrievably lost and closed the search. The bomb was deemed unrecoverable, probably buried in the soft sediment of the Sound. For those living near Tybee Island, the story never died. Locals called it the Tybee bomb. Rumors persisted that a hydrogen bomb lay beneath the mud waiting. And even today, the answer remains.
And even today, the answer remains buried beneath.